I think he's wrong about the 3 years, because I thought it was a 5-year term.
Second.
Well, I think you got at least another 2 years. So prepare yourself. I don't know what you all want to hear, but anyway, I was born in Catskill Hospital. Okay, I have parents owned a farm up here. That was several years ago, and the farm is still active. But growing up here, okay, it was quiet. Most of the people, okay, when I was born, okay, that were here are residing across the street. I was over there visiting some relatives, okay, that's why we were starting a little late. But it was always interesting. We had a neighbor, Parks, okay, who had a son, Norman, who was my age. And when we were 8 or 9, I had a horse and he had a horse. And you know, we would just take off and ride, and nobody ever looked for us. I mean, we'd be going half the day or maybe all day, and nobody ever looked for us. We just rolled around, visited neighbors, you know, got free lunches, and it was, you know, it was you know, different. And then when I got to be probably 10 or 11, then they put me to work, okay, with haying, okay, I would drive the tractor. I couldn't reach the pedals, but they would put it in a low gear, and I would just drive it around. Thought I knew what I was doing, but they loaded the hay, and what I did learn, okay, if I made a mistake and we lost 10 bales of hay, and then I had to get off the tractor and help. So you learn how to handle the tractor and not lose the load. And that's how my kids learned how to drive truck. They drove, and we loaded hay, and if it fell off, guess what? They had to pick it up. And every farm, okay, back then, and there was a lot of them. I mean, you're going Borthwick down here, on the corner of Strong and 20. That's where Blind Joe McDonald started. Was there. There was a house there, and it's gone now. And he moved up in with Mrs. Watson, and he had cows. Took care of them. We helped him, you know, did things when his barn collapsed. We built a new barn for him, and he was a good guy. But you had more, there was Armstrongs, there was, I'll bet that it was a dozen or better farms right around in the area. We had one, we milked 70 head of cows twice a day. The farm is still there. Jay milks now, and he processes milk, okay, and sells it at the end of the lane. But going back, okay, basically, okay, there wasn't a lot of social life for you as a young person growing up here. In the winter, we would all go over on a Sunday afternoon, okay, Fox's Pond. All the farmers and everybody got together, and they had a big bonfire in the farm. All the guys, okay, would talk, and us kids, we'd play ice hockey. And that was every Sunday, okay, all winter long, as long as the weather was good. In the summer, there wasn't much, okay, you had the hay to get in and everything else. There wasn't much spare time. Come night, you didn't ram because you were tired. It was just, you know, you get up 5 o'clock in the morning or 6, and just kept, you know, kept going. That was all. I was one of 5 kids. I had 4 sisters. That was interesting at times. I learned to be very careful. I did something, I threw water on them one day when they were sunbathing, okay. They come off the ground, they chase me, and they beat me. I remember that very well. So I learned to be careful. And then about in 1949, 50, that was when the first cars come around here that the local people bought. We had a 1950 Dodge. But the only time, okay, you went someplace was when you had to. You didn't, okay, grocery shopping once a month. You went to Carroll. That was, you know, the rest of the time, we were pretty much self-sufficient. Okay, you had a garden, had chickens. Every farmer had chickens back then. Okay, 500-600 of them. And so there was a guy came around and bought the eggs by the crate once a week. And any other shopping, Bell's had a little store in Durham. There was a little bit of a store here to get some bread and stuff here, which was a post office and a little grocery store and antique shop. Clarence Smith, he lived across the road and he was the postmaster. And that was where you went sometimes in the winter. I would walk down and get the mail. And it wasn't always delivered. Parks up here, he was the mail driver. Lived up on the corner of the last place on the left, I believe it was. Yeah. Ferris Parks owned the farm across the road. But going back to growing up here, I mean, it was, in the winter, okay, we could get a ride, we played basketball at the school, even though it wasn't open, okay. The janitor, Mr. Brzee, lived right next to it, okay, and we give him $2 a piece, okay, and he'd open up school and play basketball. I don't think anybody in the school district ever knew about it, but it didn't matter. We had, we cleaned up after ourselves. Back then, $2, that was big money back then. Oh, in the 60s, yeah. He did good. Anyway, and the roller skating, if you went down, Pearling, roller skated. My wife and I did a lot of roller skating. It was right there. But really, there isn't much to say about growing up around here. I mean, you survived, okay, you was careful around farm equipment, and we also helped, okay, like Alvin Moore, Bob Armstrong. We changed works, okay, if we need three or four people, they would go, or we would go there. On Blind Joe's farm, up there, the barn fell in one winter, right? And we all got together and built a new barn. It was just, boy, we did things. And then in the winter, in the summer, like 4th of July weekend, all the Irish, okay, from down East Durham would want to come up and visit him. So we would have to go over and get all these cows together, and they were like dogs. I mean, he was, and so we would nudge one over, so he, and he'd grab it by the head, and the little cow was standing there. All the money came out. They were giving him donations for the poor old blind guy, So he made out pretty good on that. It was one of those things. We had a wire that we hooked up from the house to the barn, so he could, make sure to get there. Ethel Watson was the lady he moved in with. She was the antique dealer. And she also imbibed Hennessy brandy pretty good. Like a bottle a day almost. I could never figure out where she got it. How they got it with, I mean, she didn't drive, she didn't, find, I don't know how she got it. But she did. We'd have to go out and pick up the bottles and and then I was probably 10, 12. Inglis lived down the road. The mother, okay, was May Inglis. She was in her early 90s. And the family paid me 10 cents a night to go down there and sleep, make sure she was all right. I could get down in the night and sleep down there, and then I would go home in the morning. And 10 cents a night, they 12 years old back then, that was big money. Those are the things. Anybody got questions?
What year did May Ingles die, Gina?
I don't know.
Yeah.
She was,
probably mid-50s.
the last couple of years, she didn't stay up here.
Okay.
They had her, Gilbert, took her someplace,
Did the son come up here?
not very often. He was in the banking, I believe.
Right. And Agnes, she was in the brick house, but did she come to the house either?
As much as her work would let her. Okay, like I said, she was very well known and high up in the educational system down in Washington, D.C. And as I told you before, when my father was on the school board, and they were building a school or an addition on it, and they were having funding problems and this and that, right? And she found out about it. She had to fly down to Washington, and it was amazing. He said, "Okay, I mean, you saw her up here. I mean, she was in raggedy old clothes and all. You know, the dirtier she was, the happier she was." And got down there and walking up the halls. She said, people bowed to her, and they had a big meeting. 2 weeks later, he had what he needed. You know, and she was right up there. She was in the summer. She had a little school bus, and she all the Baileys and when we were in journalism, I think. Okay, all the high people down there. She would take their kids, and they would tour the United States in that little bus. I don't know how it ever ran, but it was just, you know, she was a great lady. She was. I told you about the chimney fire and all that. She was had a chimney. We had a chimney fire, right? And we get there, and she's on the roof, straddling the roof with a garden hose right on there. She was just, you know, happy as could be.
Hey, Tommy, tell us about your family. How many generations do you know your family, and some of the other families go back in the area when they arrived, and what the ideas were passed down from your parents and your grandparents?
My family moved over from Sutton Hollow and Wyndham in 1900, and they bought that place there. And then I really have to research, but they bought 2 other parcels of land and put them all together over a period of probably 10 years. And the first barn that was there was 30 feet long. I think that was all it was. And then they put another addition on, and then there was another addition in 1948. I remember that, and that was the big addition. And that was when we started milking 70 head of cows twice a day. We probably had, with the young stock, probably 120 head. You had to keep replacing, okay. Everybody was self-sufficient back then, okay. I mean, we slaughtered the beef. We had couple pigs every year, lamb, and then garden. We didn't go to the grocery store and buy a lot of stuff. One of the big things is, things that you remember, going down to Carroll to it was the A&P and getting coffee. And it was 8 o'clock coffee, came in a bag, and you had to grind it.
Grind it. It smelled great. Grinding it.
Yep, and that was the big thing, okay? Had a wooden floor in the store, you know, but that was something that I remember was the smell of that coffee and grinding it, you know, and that's what you went for.
How far back in Greene County did the Suttons go, even before Durham?
Oh, before Durham, probably in the mid-1850s.
1850s.
Somewhere in that, in Sutton Hollow. They're related to the Cooks. In fact, we just located Marty's Lane over here. There's a cemetery on the farm, okay, we've got Cooks and Ransoms. But it's a small cemetery. Is there?
How and when did you meet Linda?
Pardon?
How and when did you meet Linda?
Oh my God, let's see. High school, she was probably a freshman, I was a junior. We didn't get along at first. And then, yeah, we started going out. We got married in 1966.
You told me a story, or maybe Linda told me, that I was talking about, I'm not local. I've lived here for 30, 40 years, but I'm not local. And you said, well, my wife is not local, she's from Freehold.
Yeah, East Greene County. We consider local, okay, as a resident of Cornwallville. You have to be dead 10 years and your name on a stone.
Just a point of information, if anyone was unclear before, the Agnes he was talking about is on the front cover of Cornwallville News, and you can find her picture in the post office. It's Agnes Ingalls O'Neill, whose father was Reverend Robert Scott O'Neill, who was a minister at the church here, and the house 500 Sutton Road that Craig and I live in was his house. That's where Agnes lived. So, if anyone was curious.
Little known fact, okay, the Agnes, okay, was the spearhead of building a cabin way up in Barlow's Notch. And that was before you had any motorized vehicles to get up there. She took a horse and a trailer and they went up and they built one there. And they started another one, but it never materialized.
Tom, you've been a police officer in Durham for over 50 years. Can you tell us a little about how that has changed, if at all?
A lot of things have changed in the police world. Some good, some bad. You know, I mean, it's just the problem with the police reform. Okay, you have one incident, okay, that changed everything. Okay, is it good? Not really. Some of it. And then we had a fight the other night. Okay, and you can't put the guy in jail to separate him because that's not bailable. So, a lot of stuff, guns, a lot of them, okay, you have to give an appearance ticket. It's just, you know, is that right? I don't think so. There's some categories of sexual contact with kids, appearance ticket. Is that right? I don't think so. But that's just my opinion. Okay, opinions are, everybody's got one. But yes, there's a lot of difference, and there was a lot of stuff when I started. If you did a little street justice, if you had a kid, okay, that was raising, okay, you spoke to him the first time, the second time you kicked him in the butt, and that usually ended the problem. You didn't arrest him, okay? They didn't end up with a record or anything else, and usually when they got home, the father found out about it. They really had a lot of that. The old judge, okay, Conway, okay, we lived in East Durham. During the summer from July to Labor Day, they held court in the firehouse. And he would come down on Friday nights, okay, and set up chairs. And people from Shamrock House would all come up or over and put chairs, you know, mark their chairs, because when we pulled up with somebody, they wanted to see what was going to happen. And Conway, he would come down, he'd have a top hat on, he'd have a cane, and he'd have a cigar, and he had a newspaper under his arm. And the only reason he had the newspaper under his arm was to hide the Hennessy Brady. Back at his chair where he sat there and held court, there was a player piano, and he would open up and put it in. And sometime during court, he'd get thirsty. We went in one night with a guy to arraign him, right? We couldn't find him. He passed out on the top of the chair, on the floor. Just, you know, it was a different era. There was 22 bars in the town when I started. They didn't all there were 3 that operated all winter. The rest of them, okay, they would open up. And, you know, it was completely different. Completely. As far as bar fights and that type of stuff, which we had a lot of, you could see the progression. Okay, first it'd be just a bar fight. Okay, and the next 2 or 3 years, okay, somebody broke a bottle and would use that as a weapon, and then another couple of years they would go get a baseball bat, and then they've got guns. I mean, you could see the progression grow as time went on. It was, you know, it was different. But it was.
Would you talk a little bit about what you remember of the church being moved in the early 1960s? And because most of us, very few here can even imagine the church being
a lot of controversy about that, okay, and locally. They didn't want it to, but it got moved. I don't really know too much about it. It's out in Cooperstown.
Yeah.
They put it up. The Grange Hall was here. That was quite active back then. Okay, all summers, and then they had strawberry socials, ice cream, so you know. My father and I and Alvin Moore used to cut the wood and bring it down and stack it for their wood furnace. They used to play basketball in there. My father did, I never did. And they played what they call professional rules off the wall. Okay, there's no out of bounds, okay? And my mother told me, there were several nights that she had to fix wainscot and slivers out of his back. It was quite interesting.
Where was that located?
Pardon?
Where was that located?
Right up here.
Oh.
Grange Hall, it was a Grange Hall back up there. Had a big grate in the center where the heat come up through, and the kitchen was downstairs, so if they had something upstairs, okay, they had to carry all the food upstairs.
That's what I'm wondering, what domination was the church? My daughter just had someone question her that, oh, the church from Cornwallville moved, and I'm like, I've been here for 25 years, I don't know what church moved.
I don't remember, okay, who the ministers were down here. I didn't get to go to church very much. That Sunday morning, okay, we were still doing chores with cows and stuff when they had their, one of those things.
And I do remember Almond Moore. I lived down the hill from him, and back in when I got to know him, he was elderly with his big old car coming down the road, going to visit his wife at the nursing home. What a great guy.
5'6", weighed maybe 135 pounds. But I'll tell you, if I was up in the hay mound stacking hay and he was unloaded, even when he was probably 73 or 40 years old.
Yes, great guy.
Everything he did was on a dead run. And he was sick all winter, okay? But as soon as anything, he could get out and work on tractors and stuff, he was healthy as could be. And Redis is on the corner.
Yes. Annie, I keep in touch with, and Blind Joe's descendant Kathy now is in the home, that Blind Joe, and what you said is so true. He has so much documentation with the line running for him to get from one spot to the other, so that was great the way you presented that.
Ellen Redis was quite a large lady. When Almond came by, he was probably 75 or so, and she'd fallen on the ice, and he couldn't get her up. So he went home, he got an axe, and he cut a hole in the ice for her feet to get in, okay, and then he could get her up. Yeah, didn't bother to call anybody. And then going on to the progression, okay, probably cell phones, and it's the biggest thing that progressed, okay. Probably, I don't know if any of you have ever used a rotary phone, okay, where you dial, okay. And we were on what they call the party line. There was 6 or 7 other people on it. And if it rang at our house, it rang someplace else. And of course, everybody pricked up to listen to what was going on. But that was, and then when, that was quite a...
It was an interesting thing.
Kind of hard to keep a secret, right?
You were careful what you said, I can tell you that.
I just ended my experience with my mother-in-law. She had set up kind of like the old party line between my home and her home on Moores Road. And it was interesting. We had the code. It was just because it was just the two of us now. It was ring once, hang up, it's for her. Let it ring twice, hang up. It's for us, so that we weren't picking up hearing everybody else's
I
conversation.
don't really remember how the rings went and who was on them, but basically all of Sutton Road was on a party line, they called it. And that was just the way it went. And then televisions came around. I was probably 17 when they got the television at the farm. Little black and white television with rabbit ears. You got 3 channels. You had to get up and change them yourself. And when they had a remote, we had that for a long time. And then when I got married, of course, we got bigger and better televisions. Back then, a certain era, okay, you had to have a console television. Okay, you weren't anybody if you didn't have a console. And on Thanksgiving, my brother-in-law and I sat there watching a football game. and there was a little puff, and those smoke come out, and the flames come right out the back of it, right? I yelled at my wife, she yanked the door open, right, and my brother-in-law threw it out on the lawn and burned up. It was, you know, like I said, it was a different era, okay? I went to Durham Elementary School. You went from, when I started first grade to 8th. The year after that, okay, they had a kindergarten they started. Mrs. Van Shank was there. And but things have changed. And one day, one year, the principal of high school, or the school up there during deer season, got us, 3 of us boys out of class right now who drag a deer. I mean, it was completely different. And then when you graduated from the 8th grade up here, you either went, depending on where you lived, you either went to Middleburg, Greenville, or Carroll. And that was the way they split things up. And I guess it all worked. I went to Greenville. That's where I was. Not my wife, maybe.
Tommy, at the end of Sutton is the old schoolhouse, right? Is that correct? The building right on the end? Isn't that the old school? I think your sister, Elsie, told me she was the last class that went to that school.
In the Gulf Schoolhouse?
Right at the end of your street, at the bottom of the hill on the left there. Isn't that the old schoolhouse?
Well, there's one old schoolhouse up here.
Okay.
Okay. Then there's one in Gulf School, down in the dip on Gulf School. But Travassi owned that after it became, after they gave it up as a school. And then my mother, she bought that off him. The Travassi, Frank Travassi, was up here on Sutton Road. His wife Lynn was head of the New York City Library System. And he, in World War I, lost an arm. And he became a painter. And his paintings are worth quite a lot of money. Because they left up here and they went to Texas, so you had a big gallery down there. And every time, okay, one of us kids got married or something, he gave us a picture. Some of them are worth some money.
Yeah.
Worth more now that after he passed away.
It's
anyway.
interesting, there are 2 schoolhouses quite close to each other, the one in Cornwallville and the one on Gulf Schoolhouse. What was the difference in who went to which one?
Just where you lived, okay. Who wanted to walk the farthest or the least? Yeah. And then over on Cunningham Road, okay, there was another one. Okay, schoolhouse. Other than that, I really don't know too much about the schoolhouses. Morse owned the one over on Cunningham Road.
In 1939, William S. Borthwick hosted a party at this schoolhouse where he taught, basically, because all the schoolhouses were being sold and changed, and the one that's here on 20 was bought locally and served for a while as a library, as a summer lending library.
Yes.
And that property was attached to the house that's now owned by the Garfinkels. I forget historically who owns the house right across from the schoolhouse, but that's when it was originally built. They donated the property that the schoolhouse was built on.
And the only property that sits on, okay, is just about the footprint of the house.
Yeah.
Okay. There's no room to drill a well. There's no room for septic. Last I knew, the people who owned it were in California, and they wanted $70,000 for it.
Yeah.
I was back many years ago. I was driving truck, and I got home one evening. It was cold, and probably end of November, and I was in my t-shirt. I was, getting ready to have dinner, and Parks called. Said, "You got to come down. Somebody's breaking in the building." So I go down. I got a t-shirt on. I got no sock. I was just, shot down there. And here's these 2 guys, and they broke in. And they had this big Cadillac backed up to the door. And Henry and Francis Finch, remember them well, okay? Henry had a bad leg from a motorcycle accident. He had to have a cane. I only had one set of handcuffs, so I handcuffed Francis and I took the cane away from him. That made a big deal when I went to court, okay? The attorney, that was cool and unusual like that. And the reason these guys got around here, they were from Yorktown Heights. They had come up with a bunch of welfare kids to the Bible camp. Okay, and that's how they knew the area. And they had broken into several other places. They had a couple of those old brass fire extinguishers like that, and they were going to steal the fire wood stove. They were going to sell it, and they had quite a lot of Christmas presents from places that they broke in, you know. And they had a loaded shotgun. They had anyway. I ended up in court numerous times. They were on parole, and that's, you know, I remember their names. And the town back then refused to reimburse my lost time. That's how you remember things. But anyway, they went back to prison. They've been had numerous records. You know, it was just one of those things. But anyway.
That's funny.
Out of curiosity, you said the schoolhouse on the corner of Sutton and 20, that only does not have room to put a well or anything?
Nope.
Because it looks, the way they advertise, it's like it's gonna be a little bigger. And my grandson was interested, and I'm like, you better do a little research.
I don't know what you would do. I don't know what you would do with it. You'd have to bring water in, pour to that maybe. I don't know.
Right, yeah, he's thinking, I'm living off the grid, and I'm thinking, oh, okay,
Yeah,
do your research.
That's just on the footprint. It's got maybe a foot around each side of it.
But
Okay,
honestly, just for point of information, the title is disputed. The property was donated, it wasn't the property, it was donated only so long as the schoolhouse building was in use. It's owned by James Garfinkel, who owns the property, and the people that own the schoolhouse, honestly, they own the building.
Yes.
They don't own the property.
Yeah, right. I think, okay, because Ferris Pars had the farm there, and I think he donated that property.
Oh no, went back to the 19th century.
Oh, does it? Okay.
Yeah, because they built it in the 1830s.
Okay.
Yeah.
I caught 4 or 5 kids in there once. They were just looking around. So I took them up to their parents. I don't know what happened to them, but
Is there anything in there? There's nothing in there now, is there?
I don't know. There used to be a lot of stuff in there stored. I don't know now. Somebody broke into it, but nobody broke a window out in the back there and went in about a year ago. But they got that boarded up now.
They can't be very sure, the owners of the building, who live in California, as you were saying, they can't be that serious because it says for sale by owner and then there's a phone number which is completely faded away, so. There's no realtor or anything like that.
There was a gentleman on top of Sutton Road that restores those buildings, and he was wanted to buy it and move it up on his property, you know. But he could never make contact with it, nobody ever, you know. But
Oh,
they were
so
there
when
one day when I
it's,
stopped, okay, just to see who, you know, who was there. They said they wanted $70,000 for it.
so when they say James Garfield, it's not Barry and Gloria, it's
Just
Garfinkel.
Garfinkel, okay,
It's a-
okay, I
it's a
got the
song.
last name wrong, okay.
And you also have the brick house, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking
Well,
here.
the brick houses,
Brother.
Well,
is
David,
Gloria
okay,
and Barry.
Garfinkel, he passed away. Paul is Gloria and Jane, Barry's son. I think that James is too, but I'm not sure of that.
James is a son by the Barry's previous marriage.
Okay,
There's a daughter, Georgianne, right?
No, that's James's wife.
yeah.
Oh.
Anybody got anything most? Or,
Yeah, I'm just curious, Tommy, back in the early eighties, a little history on that Alex Mengel case, remember the serial killer that
Yes.
came up? Can you talk a little about that, because it was right down Cornwall Road, and it was a crazy scenario, I'm not familiar with the case, I'm just wondering
Well, I
detail.
think the one, well, anyway, there's a couple different ones. Alex Mingle got stopped, okay, down, towards the city. One thing led to another, and he shot a cop and killed him down there.
Oh.
He stole the cop's car, and took off, and they found it in a Walmart's parking lot. And he kidnapped Beverly Capone, okay, and brought her up here across from, the Carlos Motels, way down in back there. And, he was seen down in Carroll on the phone booth, okay, talking to somebody who started the big man out there. And another guy and I hit that cabin just checking, okay, and it had been broke into. And there was bubbles in the sardine can in the sink, right? And he killed her there. He stabbed her, okay, and then he skinned her head, okay, and he fastened it to his head with a coat.
Oh my God.
And he buried her down in back, and we're pretty sure he was burying her when we were there. And, but anyway, they got him in Canada when he was trying to cross. But anyway, he stopped and talked to a little girl halfway across the state, and she said he was the ugliest looking woman she ever saw.
So this cabin, it had nothing to do with Gary Czar's place, you know, on Cornwall Road, it wasn't that?
No, that was,
Please,
oh God,
Oh, jeez.
that was Danny, oh God.
okay, not
I
that.
gotta think here a minute now. Danny Umstead
Okay.
was married to Janet Rockefeller, and they split up. And she had a boyfriend, and he was quite jealous. And he went to the house and he shot her 3 times, and then tried to choke her with a Venetian blind. So anyway, he took off. She lived. And the Olmsted place up there, I went up there with a couple troopers. We located his vehicle up there. And then they got the dog and they were tracking him. But he got way over to Carlanders. 3 o'clock in the morning, he called the sheriff and gave himself up. And the other one, okay, around up on Moore Road, his name was Milligan. He rented Alma Moore's house. And he had the family up here and everything. And the daughter said, called somebody and said they were being held against their will. And they were from down around Carmel. And Carmel PD wouldn't do anything, right? Somehow she got away and she went down there and she walked into the Carmel police station and dumped a half a bushel basket, okay, with pistols around there. And then they believed her. And anyway, he got arrested in Hansel and Gretel's restaurant, okay? And the history of him was, he was father of the year down there, he coached baseball, everything, but he was taking flights all over the country, holding up banks. And the one bank down around Carmel, he shot the teller. And that was one of the guns, okay, that they recovered. And he got arrested. They arraigned him up there. The judge was my brother-in-law. Anyway, the bail was set at $25,000. Well, the attorney laid $15,000 out and said, "Here." My brother said no. Well, then they come up with the other 10. And he got out on bail. His wife had a boyfriend. He went and he shot both of them, killed them. They found his car on the Tappan Zee Bridge, and they recovered his body someplace. He committed suicide. I don't remember where it was. Supposedly he always, wherever he went, he always buried getaway money. Nobody's ever found it, but that's a lot of people look. But that's, you know,
When was that?
it's in the 80s. Yeah. No, I was,
80s was a busy decade, I guess,
yeah.
Wasn't famously Legs Diamond also, I don't know if you know that, was...
Lex Diamond was a very well liked man down around Carroll, because he paid for 2 or 3 kids' operations, and they loved him. And my my uncle, okay, was the original owner of the Carroll Diner. And he literally, fast women and slow horses guy. Anyway, he would tell about, okay, the gangsters riding up and down through on the hoods of cars, shooting things. Yeah. Anyway, I see Jay's here ready to take this mic. Come on, Jay.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you so much.